The message arrived like a punch to the gut. "Sorry, Mom, but you're not on the list." As soon as I read those words, I felt the connectivity of my world crumbling. My granddaughter's wedding, an event that was supposed to be a celebration of love and union, was turning into a painful blow of exclusion. I am Renee, I am 60 years old, and I am a psychologist. I have dedicated my life to helping others face their emotional conflicts, but nothing could have prepared me for the avalanche of feelings that was now consuming me. Where are you, those who hear me? Where is the empathy when your son, Charles, the one I have always loved deeply, decides that my presence is no longer necessary? I looked out my office window, the autumn leaves falling, reminding me of the fragility of life and relationships. The space was becoming suffocating, while a wave of frustration whispered within me. I, who had always been the calm and stability in the lives of so many, now found myself thrown to the outside, a forced spectator of my own granddaughter's wedding. Charles, my son, always had a pragmatic and somewhat distant way about him. He had grown up like that, deciding everything on his own, without considering the influence his choices might have on others. I remember when he was little, casting adventure spells around me, while I tried to protect him from any pain. But now, the suffering he was causing pierced me like a sharp blade. "You're not on the list." Those words weren't just a sentence. They were a summary of the pain accumulating over years of indifference. If this story has hooked you so far, leave a like to support the channel. This shows me that this story format makes sense to you, and I know I should bring more. Returning to my story, he pronounced those cold words without thinking of the emotional consequences they would bring. My heart ached, not just from the rejection, but also from Charles's lack of perception about what was at stake. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer part of the story he was writing. Deep down, I knew something bigger was at play. It wasn't just a wedding, it was the result of a shattered relationship that needed to be carefully explored. My mind was becoming a battlefield, every thought running like a bear searching for a clear path. "I'm going to understand what's happening," I resolved in silence, as anger and sadness mixed with a quiet determination, the first light of a plan. Charles was always an independent soul, and I admired that in him. Since he was little, he had a singular capacity to make decisions, even if those choices led him down a path of solitude. Sometimes, I wondered if his obstinacy was a form of protest against the fragility of our family. Deep down, he always felt like the absent son, a squirrel running in circles on a wheel that never stopped. Christmas memories were a clear example of this. The boy who one day helped decorate the tree with enthusiasm was now organizing festivities in secret, decided on allocating his time away from home. The memory of a Christmas where we all gathered quickly overlapped with the current silence. Charles, with his serious look and cutting coldness, always had a meticulous plan in mind, but not for me. I was left out, realizing how the connection we once had was fading away. Maya, my granddaughter, was like a ray of sunshine on the gray facade. She always had light in her eyes, especially when she shared little secrets she knew about her father's behavior. But even our conversations seemed to be under surveillance, as if Charles were always nearby, ready to divert attention. Those interactions were now tangled in a strange fog. I easily remembered a younger Maya bringing me flowers, rehearsing her own art of being kind and illuminating. However, every time Charles entered the room, it seemed the light went out and our words became cautious. What was once our little refuge of love and affection was becoming increasingly complicated by his interventions, which often seemed more like control than genuine concern. Flashbacks intertwine with the present, and my heart weighs heavy remembering the day Charles came home, so full of enthusiasm after one of his first victories in court. The joy on his face was like spots of paint on a blank canvas. I asked how it felt to receive praise, but instead of sharing the glow, he deflected, talking about what others thought. "Don't worry, Mom. You do well not to get involved," he said, still with that dismissive tone that always bothered me. When was it that he decided my presence stood in the way of his achievements? Now, looking at the autumn leaves falling outside the window, I reflect on whether I really understood them. Where did he get lost? When did he make indifference his safe harbor? I was about to discover Charles's methods. I decided I needed to talk to Maya, to open a space where she could express herself without her father's shadow hovering over us. A coffee, I thought. A moment of connection that could free us from the invisible chains surrounding us. As I prepared for the meeting, my heart raced. I sensed that Maya had her own insecurities about the true nature of her relationship with her father. Arriving at the coffee shop, the soft light of the place brought a sense of hope, but Maya's fixed gaze stirred a worry in me. What did she really think? What weight was she carrying on her back? "Grandma, are you okay?" she asked, looking into my eyes with genuine curiosity, but there was something more, a subtext of concern, as if she sensed this meeting had a hidden purpose. I decided not to hide behind words, but I also didn't want to be aggressive. "I'm here to talk, Maya. I want to know how you feel about all this." She hesitated. Undoubtedly, words were crossing her mind, but the invisible pressure of the paternal figure held her back. I noticed a shadow falling over her thoughts, and the questions she didn't have the courage to ask formed a whirlwind in her gaze. To not pressure her, I decided to listen, to give her space. There, between sips of coffee and silent glances, the initial truth was visible. The thread of communication was slowly beginning to untie. As a psychologist, I have always believed that every conversation, every word, has immense power. And in that moment, I was willing to gather the courage necessary to understand the role Charles had played in all our lives. After the first sip of coffee, the air seemed different between us. Maya looked at the cup as if the answer were there, but soon raised her eyes and, finally, broke the silence. "Grandma, I don't know, it's all very confusing." Her words came out like a sigh loaded with an emotional weight I hadn't perceived until then. Her look was a flickering flame, a small light in a labyrinth of uncertainties. I encouraged her to continue. "You know you can talk to me, don't you? What are your thoughts about the wedding and how Charles is handling all this?" I felt that those simple questions could open a Pandora's box full of feelings and perceptions. A moment of hesitation followed, then she began. "I see how he transforms, as if he were building a wall around us. He is so focused on the perfect image for the wedding that he forgot what really matters. It's as if he's trying to hide his insecurities under this happy facade." Those words, wrapped in meaning, stirred something inside me. I couldn't help but notice that Maya was getting closer to the truth. "And you? How do you feel regarding that?" I asked, seeking to awaken her own introspection. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm in the middle of a war. I want to be loyal to him, but I also want you around. I don't understand why he acted this way, forcing me to be a mediator in this family drama. Why can't he see what he's doing to us?" Maya was hurt, and her desire for reconnection was becoming palpable. The tightness in my chest loosened as she spoke, creating a space where she could release the accumulated emotions. With a lighter heart, she continued, "And it's painful not knowing if I'm doing the right thing and trying to make peace between you two. I want everyone to be happy, but I feel like Charles isn't willing to yield." With every word from Maya, the truth about Charles was revealing itself, and the discomfort was beginning to make sense. "Maya, the amount of love and willingness you have to deal with this is admirable," I replied, seeking to offer genuine support. "He is still your father. Family relationships are complex. But you need to know that your voice is important, that acknowledging your feelings won't slow you down." I even felt an echo of my own story in her words, a reflection of the pains so many families face. "It's as if all these insecurities of his are reflecting on me," she murmured, a desolate tone now scratching her words. "And I don't know how to deal with this, Grandma. I just want him to remember what it means to be a family." Before I could answer, a wave of curiosity took over me. "Maya, do you think this exclusion, taking me off the list, is a way of trying to maintain control or protect something he values greatly?" I looked into her eyes, trying to point to a hidden perception that Charles perhaps didn't realize. "Yes, maybe. It's like he's trying to show he's a strong, independent man, but he's losing what really matters." Maya finally seemed to be advancing in her understanding. Amidst all this, I realized the conversation had become basic research data on our past. As she spoke, the desire to investigate more about Charles began to intensify. The urge to understand his mind was forming into a plan. Unfortunately, I knew the dialogue wouldn't end there. It was essential to explore deeper into what really motivated Charles. Once the seed of doubt about his emotions was planted in Maya's mind, I decided that our journey of discovery couldn't stop. The next step would be to approach Charles directly, to discover the reason behind this behavior and face a truth that everyone would need to deal with. Each revelation brought me closer to what was needed to restore relationships and, thus, recover the love that seemed invisible. With the coffee still warm between my fingers, the conversation with Maya echoed in my mind like a resonating drum. It was time to confront Charles and understand his motivations. With determination growing inside me, I prepared for the approach. The decision was made. I would not retreat. In the following days, I observed Charles from afar, looking for clues about his behavior. The wedding day was approaching, and with it, the pressure on him increased. He had become a shadow, alerting me to how worn out he was. The coldness in his posture was evident. Every time he moved, it seemed he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. The smile that appeared occasionally was superficial, something that left me unsettled. He was struggling with much more than I could see, and I had to understand what was in his heart. After days of silence, I sent him a message, inviting him to lunch. It was instinctive. I knew the exact location was important, a restaurant we always enjoyed together, where memories surrounded us like a welcoming hug. With nerves on edge, I waited for him, every minute an eternity. When he finally opened the door, the familiar expression on his face was far from the joy we used to share. "Hi, Mom," he said, as he settled at the table. The coldness in his voice was palpable. It was the moment I had waited for so long, yet at the same time feared. "What did you want to talk about?" The absence of a warm greeting hit me like a punch to the gut. I kept my composure as the words formed on the tip of my tongue. "Charles, I just got back from meeting with Maya. You know she is feeling the pressure of your decision regarding the wedding, don't you?" My voice sounded serene, but inside, it was a hurricane, wondering if he recognized the impact of his actions. He seemed to hesitate, his tired expression twisting in a confusion of emotions. "Mom, I don't care what she feels. What matters is what I want for my life." The poison of his words had the force of a storm. I understood that Charles was using indifference as armor, a way to protect himself from the insecurities that haunted him. I took a deep breath, strengthening my determination to get him to open up. "Charles, you may not see it, but your decisions impact not only you, but everyone who loves you, including Maya. You need to understand that you are losing something precious, something that may never come back." He had a moment of contemplation, but soon the coldness returned. "I am not losing anything. I am gaining everything, Mom. It's time to stop worrying about what others think and live my life." His tone was disdainful, and the conversation was about to go off the rails. I tried not to get carried away by anger. "That isn't the answer you're really looking for, Charles. You can't live your life just for yourself. That won't bring you true happiness." The surroundings began to blur as I watched the internal battle unfolding in his eyes. There was a flame, a conflict I could see igniting in his emotions. But before I could say anything else, he stood up abruptly. "I'm not going to stay here while you try to manipulate me. I have a life to live." And he left, the door closing behind him, a bang that made my heart stop for a moment. I stayed there, at the table, alone with my frustrations. How could I break this barrier? How could I reach him when pride was creating a moat between us? The pain of rejection was there, a constant and heavy presence. Even so, beneath this layer of despair, there was a spark of hope that committed me not to give up on him or on us. I decided I shouldn't walk away. Instead, it was time to change the approach. Charles was so focused on projecting an image of strength that he barely noticed the fragilities piling up in the shadows around him. What I needed was a more subtle strategy and a stronger emotional connection. I concluded that a positive step would be to reconnect with Maya so that together we could reinforce our goal of rescuing Charles from the solitude he was creating for himself. She couldn't be the target of his insecurities. We had to build a bridge between the three of us, a way to open his heart to the voice of love. I went to Maya's house that night, greeted by a hesitant invitation. We talked, shared the weight we were forced to carry, like an army of two women deciding to fight the difficulties Charles had imposed. Together, we decided that, as a family, we were stronger than any crisis. The true wedding began with unity and understanding, and that was what Charles needed to feel, that love would always prevail, and that, even in the darkest moments, there would always be a light that could guide him back home. In the following days, tension hung in the air like a worn-out cloud. Each morning that rose brought with it the challenge of maintaining the resolve to unite our family, and there was a renewed purpose pulsing within me. Maya and I exchanged messages, putting together a cautious plan, waiting for the right moment to approach Charles again. We needed a new focus, an approach that conveyed to him that we were not adversaries, but allies. Our shared goal was the same, to restore love and communion. When we finally decided it was time to act, we chose a lunch at Charles's house, a space that I, for a long time, had considered a welcoming home full of memories. The table was elegantly set, decorated with fresh flowers and dishes that reflected joy. But the atmosphere was far from festive. Charles was standing in the kitchen, his expression revealing that he was absorbed in his own thoughts. He looked like a closed box, incapable of opening up to us. When he saw me, his gaze stiffened, and I could feel the nervousness spreading through the air. Maya and I looked at each other, and I realized it was time to start building the bridge we aspired to. "Hi, honey." We made a little food and thought it would be nice to have some time together. I started with a calm voice, but with content that carried more insecurities than I would like to admit. "I'm not hungry, Mom," he replied, disdain erupting like thunder. The fragile smile I tried to draw on my face turned into a straight line. His resistance was palpable, but I was determined not to give up. The table was set for a moment of reconnection, and we couldn't let it slip away. Maya, with the courage that remained, stepped closer. "Dad, we just want to talk. We don't need parties or smiles, but we need to understand what's happening with you. The situation is impacting us, and it's time to stop avoiding it." Her voice was firm, yet soft. There was a tone of love and concern in her words. I admired her for that. Charles's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, perplexity mixed with anger. "Why does everything have to be a dramatic conversation? It makes no sense. I am an adult. I can make my own decisions without you two trying to control me." Charles's defensive words cut my heart. His ego was at stake, and we knew we had to handle him with care. It was in this moment of confrontation that I decided it was time to show my cards. I faced Charles with sincerity. "Charles, I know you are independent, and I admire that in you too. But for some reason, you believe that your happiness needs to be a battle. You prioritize this impression of strength, but it is possible to be strong while allowing yourself to be vulnerable." There was a short silence where the breath of everyone in the room seemed suspended. Charles narrowed his eyes, as if he were measuring the words coming out of my mouth. The heat of the truth could not be ignored, but defensiveness was the way he had found to protect himself from what was at stake. "You don't know what it's like to be me. You don't know what I'm going through," he shot back, almost in a cry of anguish. I noticed that the shadow of pain was real, and there was much more behind his harsh attitude. I needed to go deeper, but without forcing my hand into the open wound. "Then tell me, Charles. We are here to hear you. You are not alone in this battle. Maya and I are not here to control you, but to unite with you, so you can face anything. This moment doesn't need to be a fight or a burden. You don't need to walk alone," I said, feeling that the empathy in my words was a path he needed to explore. Charles hesitated, and, for a brief moment, the shine in his eyes seemed softer, but soon it was extinguished by a new whirlwind of emotions. "I am what I am, and that is sufficient for me. I don't want to seem weak. I don't want people to think I am willing to fail. Charles, failing is not the same as allowing yourself to feel. You are not becoming weak by seeking support. You become stronger by opening up and expressing your insecurities." Maya now approached cautiously, speaking softly. That was when I received a wave of strength that erupted in my heart. I needed to inject a new perspective. "Charles, this wedding represents a new chapter in your life. It is a moment that should be celebrated, but not as the sole definition of your worth. You don't have to live for others or worry about appearances. Loving sincerely is the best way to mature in all this." Finally, the structure that kept Charles so rigid began to split into small cracks. I saw the silent struggle reflected in his gaze, as if the barriers isolating him were slowly crumbling. He wasn't that distant, just lost in his own labyrinth of cravings and demands. The tension in the air diminished some, and a new space seemed to open up. "Maybe I don't have the answers to all this," Charles murmured, a weakness in his voice where before there was so much hardness. "The truth is I'm scared. Scared of making mistakes, scared of not being the father you expect." Maya and I exchanged significant looks, a mix of sadness and hope. This was the turning point we were waiting for. And so, with a light touch on the words, we began to walk the path together, laying the foundation for the journey of healing and reconciliation we so needed. The atmosphere in the room began to change, as if a soft light were finally piercing the heavy clouds of doubt and fear. I could feel Charles's vulnerability hovering in the air. He was letting his armor crumble, and that filled me with a comfortable and hopeful warmth. "Charles," I said, "it is natural to feel fear. But it is what we do with that fear that defines who we are." He ran a hand over his face, expressing the internal struggle unfolding within him. "It's just that. I don't know how to be the father you need. I wanted to be strong. I thought that if everything looked perfect, I could push all this away. the doubt, the uncertainty. The sincerity in his words was palpable, like the fresh spring wind breaking the winter cold. Maya, who had been so silent until that moment, decided to add her voice to the confrontation. You were never perfect, Dad. And we don't need you to be. We just need you to be present, to love, and to give us the freedom to be who we are. She was clearly feeling more confident, and that was a good sign. The strength of the vulnerability shared among us created a network of understanding. I wasn't the ideal father for you, and I often wonder if I was good enough. I watched you grow, and I just wanted to be an example. But now, all I can think about is how afraid I am of disappointing you all, Charles replied, his voice choked up, and tears were already beginning to shine in his eyes. This was a dilemma he couldn't carry alone. The pressure had eased, but we couldn't let that moment escape. Charles, I began, a new determination sprouting in my heart. The most important thing you can do is open yourself to us. What matters isn't the image you project, but the vulnerability you demonstrate. What matters is the love that exists between us, the bond we can cultivate from your insecurities. He took a deep breath, a gesture that seemed to be pushing away the pain. It's hard. I always thought showing weakness meant failing. I learned that from a young age. In my mind, being strong is not showing feelings. He spoke, with the truth creaking in every word. But true strength comes from not being afraid to show those feelings, I replied. The momentum of my words seemed to take effect. A committed connection was blooming, and Charles was beginning to understand that he could be both strong and vulnerable. I just don't want to make you and Maya suffer anymore. I'm trying to create a new life, a new home. And yet, I feel like I'm getting it wrong at every step. Now it was Maya's turn to get closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. We are here for you. Life isn't a perfect straight line. It's full of curves of challenges. True beauty lies in facing these challenges together. What matters is that your essence is always present in your efforts. If you fail, we will be here to support you. A deep moment of understanding passed between us, and I could perceive that Charles was beginning to open up, slowly, like a flower resisting the morning cold. Maybe I lost sight of what it really means to be a family, he said, the hesitation still visible in his eyes. Maya smiled lightly. We are here, ready to remind you, and for you to remind us what it means to be family. We don't need to be perfect. We can be ourselves. I took a moment to release the pressure that was building in my chest. Charles, now that you've started talking, I want you to know that the choice to open up is the first of many others to come. There will be no more loneliness between us. We are going to face all this together. He nodded slowly, as if every word he heard began to create a new narrative in his life. And if I fail again? Charles asked, now a little more vulnerable. If you fail, we will be here to help you get up. My tone was firm, but affectionate, reflecting the same connection that had been established. I looked at Maya, who must have been feeling the same relief as I was, and when she returned the look, I knew the journey made sense. Charles, still with doubt in his eyes, gave a slight tilt of his head. Then let's do this. The words came out as if they were a silent pact, a threshold marked between past and present. The mood in the room was no longer of a battle, but there was a rebirth there, a new cycle about to begin. Charles was finally beginning to realize that he could be loved for who he really was, a man who, even fearing uncertainty, could find strength and acceptance in us. We decided to sit at the table, the food still waiting for our occasion. But now, what mattered wasn't just the dishes laid out. What really resonated was the honesty and a new commitment, not just to him, but also among us as a family. Hand in hand, we looked toward the future we were building together. It was a new stage, full of emotions, vulnerabilities, and, above all, love. Charles's first true smile lit up the room when we sat at the table. The food was cold, but the warmth wrapping our hearts heated the environment. I knew that was a milestone moment, a symbol of an open dialogue beginning to take shape. So, what are we going to do now? Charles asked, still with a touch of insecurity in his voice. Maya and I exchanged glances, realizing the answer wasn't just about dinner, but about the new dynamic we were building. Let's talk, Maya replied firmly, about what we expect from each other, how we can be the family we want to be so much. We began to share our feelings and expectations. Charles had so much to say, and as the words escaped his lips, they became lighter in the air. He spoke about his ambitions, his deepest fears, and, for the first time, opened his heart to us. I could see the release of a burden he had carried for so long. I don't want to be just a father, but the father you deserve. Someone present, who listens and understands, Charles stated, the honesty in his intentions rising to the surface. And hearing him, I felt that love was solidifying in its purest form. Maya, moved by his words, said, "You are already doing that by opening up and being honest. That is what we need to move forward." Tears streamed down her face, but it was a happy cry, a sign of light spreading on a path that, until recently, seemed so dark. I also felt tears accumulating in my eyes, a mixture of relief and joy. "We are in this together, Charles. What you need to know is that we will face whatever comes arm in arm. We won't let old shadows separate us again." Dinner, which at first seemed like a mere rite to be fulfilled, turned into a celebration of life and reconnection. Laughter began to sound in the room, shared memories emerging from a distant corner of the past. We told old stories, recalling how a simple family picnic, years ago, had become a symbol of union, and it was clear that energy was returning. As we continued to talk, Charles began to seek strength not just in words, but in actions. "How about we start doing more things together? Just the three of us as a family," he suggested, already more confident. It was noticeable that he was committed to this new phase, and the words only confirmed a desire that was solidifying. "Yes, we can explore what everyone likes. How about we start with something simple, like a walk in the park or exploring new recipes in the kitchen?" I proposed, feeling the contagious energy of possibility. "And why not plan a trip together?" Charles added, his eyes shining with an almost childlike emotion. "Maybe a weekend in a place we've always wanted to visit." Deep down, I knew this was the new beginning we craved so much. The ideas flowed, and the fear, which before hung like a shadow, was disappearing, giving space to renewed hopes. When we finally got up from the table, it was already night, but there was enough light in us to illuminate any darkness that might still surround us. In that moment, the seed of reconnection had been planted, and we were ready to cultivate it and make all the beauty and love this family still had to offer bloom. And so we united in a tight hug, a symbol of everything that had changed. We created a new bond between us, a commitment of love that would become the foundation of our future journey. It was just the beginning, but for sure, it was the start of true transformation.